Every morning, you're standing at a crossroads. Either command the day or become its servant. Before the noise, before the world wakes, your destiny is quietly being decided. If you stumble into the day unfocused, life owns you. But when you master your first hour, you own life. Your energy sharpens, your focus locks in, you become unstoppable. In a few moments, I'll teach you how to master your mornings to feel energized, focused, and fully in control. The morning determines the man. There is a sacred law known only to those who have studied the habits of the truly successful. It is a truth as old as time itself, that a man's destiny is forged not in the grand moments of triumph, but in the quiet rituals that begin before the world stirs. Success in its purest form does not happen by accident. It is not granted by fortune, nor is it dispensed by favor. It is constructed deliberately, methodically, in the first hour of the morning, when the world is silent and the mind is unclouded by the chaos of the day. The man who commands his morning commands his life. It is in that first sacred hour, between sleep and the demands of the world, where one's fate is either seized or squandered. A man who rises without intention, who greets the day with lethargy or indifference, unknowingly hands over his power to circumstances. He becomes a servant to the whims of life, forever reacting, forever being pushed by forces greater than himself. But the man who rises with purpose, who greets the dawn with discipline and direction, becomes the architect of his reality. He dictates how the day will unfold, and in doing so, how his life will be shaped. Understand this. When you open your eyes in the morning, you are standing at the crossroads of your existence. One path leads to mediocrity, the path of delay, distraction, and weakness. The other leads to mastery, the path of deliberate action, clarity of thought, and unwavering focus. Which path you choose is determined in the first moments of consciousness. The mind, still fresh and malleable, is a vessel waiting to be directed. Feed it doubt, and doubt shall multiply. Feed it strength, and strength shall become your nature. The great men of history, the titans of industry, the builders of empires, none of them left their mornings to chance. They did not rise only when their duties demanded it. They rose because greatness demanded it. They understood that before the world seeks their attention, before responsibilities knock, before challenges arrive, they must first conquer themselves. They must first direct their mind, set their intention, and prime their spirit for the day's battles. There is a stillness in the early hours that cannot be replicated. While others sleep, the man of discipline stands awake, building his mind like a fortress. He rehearses his purpose. He clarifies his goals. He nourishes his body and prepares his spirit. By the time the world opens its eyes, he is already in motion, not reacting, but leading, not waiting, but commanding. Success, true and lasting, belongs to the man who wins the morning. For if you do not master the first hour, the hours that follow will master you. Let it be known, the morning does not merely begin the day, it begins the destiny. Awaken the mind before the body. Long before the body rises, the mind stirs. It emerges quietly from the depths of slumber, delicate yet potent, waiting for direction. Few men ever grasp the power hidden in this brief window, the moments when the mind is awake, but the body has yet to move. It is here that the battle for the day is won or lost. For mastery does not begin in action, it begins in thought. The body merely follows the commands of the mind. If the mind is undisciplined, scattered, or unsure, no amount of physical movement will yield victory. But when the mind is precise, focused, and prepared, the body becomes an instrument of power, a servant to a greater will. The tragedy of the common man is that he allows the body to dictate the mind. He rises in haste, pulled from bed by urgency or obligation, already reacting before a single conscious thought has been planted. His day belongs not to him, but to circumstance. But the man who understands the sacred sequence of mastery knows that thought precedes movement. He does not fling himself into action blindly. He awakens the mind first, and in doing so, he commands the day before it even begins. As the eyes flutter open before hands touch the earth, the masterful man builds a mental blueprint. He sees the day in his mind before his feet touch the floor. He envisions the tasks, the obstacles, and the victories that lie ahead. He does not wait for events to dictate his energy. He dictates his energy to the events. In his mind's eye, he walks through the battles, sees himself composed under pressure, focused amidst distraction, and relentless in the pursuit of his purpose. This is not mere imagination. This is rehearsal. This is preparation. The mind cannot distinguish vividly rehearsed thought from reality. And when the mind believes, the body obeys. In those sacred moments between sleep and action, doubt has no place. Fear has no voice. The mind, still untouched by the noise of the day, is fertile ground. Plant weakness, and weakness will bloom. Plant strength, certainty, and clarity, and the day becomes a canvas for execution. It is here that confidence is forged, not through empty affirmations, but through the deliberate design of one's focus. The man who awakens his mind first is not rushed. He does not stumble into the day. His first thoughts are not borrowed from the world, but constructed from within. He chooses his direction. He chooses his attitude. He chooses his energy. By the time the body rises, there is no hesitation. Movement is merely the outward expression of an inner decision already made. Understand this truth. Mastery does not begin when your feet hit the ground. It begins in the silence of thought, in the rehearsal of intention, in the commanding of the mind. Awaken the mind first, and the body will follow. Steady, sharp, and ready for conquest. Gratitude, the immediate energy multiplier before the trials of the day descend, before the first demand is made, before a single problem has the chance to cross your path. There is a practice so simple yet so powerful that it separates the strong from the weak, the focused from the scattered, the masters from the masses. That practice is gratitude, not as some passive sentiment, but as an active force. It is the deliberate tuning of the mind to abundance before the world can infect it with scarcity. It is the mental armor that shields against doubt, anxiety, and fatigue. The man who rises and immediately directs his thoughts to gratitude possesses an energy that cannot be manufactured by chance. His resolve becomes unshakable, and the fog that clouds lesser men burns away before it ever has the chance to form. Gratitude is not some idle whisper of thankfulness. It is a declaration of power. It is the recognition that, despite any storm, any obstacle, or any unfinished goal, you are already standing upon the foundation of strength. When a man acknowledges what he has, his breath, his mind, his ability to think, to move, to choose, he positions himself above the petty frustrations that cripple others. The mind cannot hold fear and gratitude simultaneously. It cannot wallow in weakness while standing in the awareness of strength. Gratitude, therefore, is not merely a comfort, it is a weapon. It clears the mind, sharpens perspective, and fuels the spirit with a calm and certain energy. Most men wake to burden. Their first thoughts are of what is lacking, what is wrong, what is undone. They flood their minds with scarcity before their feet even touch the ground. No wonder they stumble through their days, drained, distracted, and defeated. But the disciplined man, the man who understands the sacred laws of mental mastery, knows better. His first thoughts are not of what he fears, but of what he possesses. He commands his mind to see the wealth already present, the strength of his body, the clarity of his mind, the opportunity that exists in simply being alive this day. This is not about ignoring challenge. It is about preparing for it. When gratitude saturates the mind, challenge no longer appears as threat. It appears as an arena. The man who starts his day rooted in gratitude does not tremble at adversity. He meets it head on because his mind is no longer clouded by the false belief that life is happening to him. Instead, life is happening for him. Every obstacle becomes an invitation to grow. Every setback becomes a lesson in mastery, and every difficulty becomes a stepping stone toward greater strength. When the mind is tuned to gratitude, energy flows differently. The fatigue that weighs on the ungrateful dissolves. The distractions that plague the scattered fall silent. In their place rises a man who is centered, focused, and armed with a clarity that few will ever know. Gratitude, practiced at the first light of day, becomes the switch that turns confusion into clarity, weakness into strength, and hesitation into unstoppable motion. It is the immediate multiplier of energy, the unseen force that fuels greatness long before the first challenge even dares to arrive. The inner dialogue of champions. Long before a man opens his mouth to speak to the world, he has already spoken countless times to himself. And it is this invisible conversation, this private dialogue within the chambers of his own mind, that determines whether he rises in strength or collapses in weakness. The truth is simple and undeniable. The man who does not command his own thoughts will be commanded by them. Most drift through life unaware of this inner voice, allowing it to ramble in fear, doubt, and complaint, poisoning their spirit before the first challenge even arrives. But the champions, the builders, the men who shape their world rather than be shaped by it, possess a different relationship with this voice. They do not allow it to operate on accident. They seize it, They mold it. They dictate it with precision and power. The inner dialogue of champions is not gentle. It does not whisper comfort. It roars with certainty. It speaks with the authority of a general commanding an army. When doubt tries to creep in, and it always does, the champion's voice rises louder, cutting through the fog with words forged in discipline. I am ready. I am capable. I am the master of this day. These are not empty affirmations spoken in the hope that they might become true. They are declarations of fact, spoken because the champion has decided that they are true. This is not about waiting for confidence to arrive. It is about creating it by force. Understand this, the mind is malleable. It believes what it is told, especially when it hears it from the commanding voice of its own master. If a man repeats weakness, he becomes weak. If he rehearses failure in his mind, failure becomes his reality long before it occurs in the world. But when a man rises and speaks to himself with clarity, when he engraves the language of victory upon his consciousness, he becomes unstoppable. His body obeys. His actions align. His energy sharpens. And doubt, which once felt like an immovable weight, scatters like dust before wind. The language one uses in the privacy of thought is not casual. It is sacred. It is the foundation upon which every decision, every action, every response is built. Champions do not indulge in statements of uncertainty. They do not say, I hope, or I wish. They say, I will, I do, I overcome. Their words carry the weight of inevitability, not mere possibility. And because the mind obeys the words it hears most, these declarations become reality, not by magic, but by the relentless alignment of thought, focus, and effort. This is the script of self-command. It is the unseen force that overrides hesitation and crushes doubt before it can take root. It does not wait for conditions to be perfect. It does not rely on luck. It is the internal contract a man writes with himself every morning, a contract that states without negotiation that he is sovereign over his mind, his energy, and his destiny. Speak weakly, and life responds in kind. Speak with power, and the world bends to meet the strength of your command. This is the way of champions. This is the law of mastery, the power of stillness and reflection. In a world that rushes headlong into noise, motion, and endless doing, there exists a forgotten power, the power of stillness. It is not the stillness of idleness, nor the stillness of laziness, but a deliberate pause, a sacred moment where the mind is permitted to breathe, to recalibrate, to sharpen itself like a blade drawn across whetstone. The man who understands the potency of silence holds an advantage over all others who rush mindlessly into the day. He knows that in stillness lies clarity, and in clarity lies power. Just 5 minutes, 5 deliberate, intentional minutes, seated in absolute silence, can reforge the mind like iron in fire. The truth is simple yet often ignored. The mind, left unchecked, becomes cluttered. It fills itself with yesterday's burdens, tomorrow's anxieties, and the 1,000 trivial disturbances that seek to invade its walls. A man who does not discipline his mind in stillness becomes reactive, scattered, easily swayed by the pressures of the world. But the man who sits in silence before the day takes hold commands a different reality. He becomes precise. His thinking cuts sharper. His decisions become rooted not in emotion but in clarity, not in changing but in settling. The moment he says, yes, you will, not in confusion but in conscious choice. In the quiet, without distraction, without the noise of the external world, a man comes face to face with his own thoughts. He sees them as they are, not disguised, not deluded, but raw and real. This is where the true work begins. In those few minutes, he can observe what serves him and what weakens him. He can examine his patterns, his fears, his ambitions, and decide, with the authority of a sovereign mind, what stays and what must be discarded. Stillness is not escape, it is confrontation. But it is a confrontation done on his terms, not the world's. There is a reason the great minds of history, thinkers, warriors, kings, sought solitude in the early hours. They understood that before one can command the world, he must first command himself, and command begins with observation. Reflection in stillness acts as a mirror polished clean, showing a man the truth of who he is at that very moment. It is from that truth that he can choose who he will become. When a man sits in silence, no movement, no sound, no external demand, he reconnects with the most important source of power there is, himself. The clutter falls away. The mind sharpens like steel under flame. Doubt dissipates. Certainty rises. He rehearses the day ahead not in chaos, but in calm authority. He sees himself acting, speaking, and moving with intention, free from the pull of unconscious habits. This stillness is not a luxury. It is a necessity for those who intend to lead their own lives rather than be led by them. 5 minutes of deliberate silence is not a withdrawal from the world, but a preparation to conquer it. In those quiet moments, the mind becomes a weapon, honed, sharp, and ready. The man who neglects this practice stumbles through the day blind, but the man who embraces it steps forward clear-eyed, disciplined, and utterly unshaken. Defining your definite chief aim. Each day there is no power greater in the hands of man than the power of a definite purpose. A mind without purpose drifts like a ship without a rudder, swayed by every wind, carried by every current at the mercy of circumstance. But the man who fixes his mind upon a clear and definite chief aim rises above the pull of randomness. His energy is no longer scattered. His steps are no longer hesitant. He moves with precision, with intention, with a fire that others cannot fathom. This is not merely a principle of success, it is the foundation of mastery itself. Every morning, before the noise of the world creeps in, the man of discipline recommits himself to his aim. He does not leave it to memory, nor does he allow it to drift quietly in the back of his mind. He writes it, ink to paper, hand to page, a ritual as sacred as the rising sun. This act is more than a reminder. It is a contract renewed. A declaration that today will not be wasted in distraction or trivial pursuit. Today belongs to the mission. The clarity that comes from this ritual is magnetic. When the mind sees a clear aim written before it, confusion dissolves, doubt has no footing, decisions that once seemed difficult become obvious. If an opportunity aligns with the chief aim, it is pursued. If it distracts or detracts, it is discarded without hesitation. This clarity creates an unmistakable sense of power, a sureness that radiates in the way one walks, speaks, and acts. A man who knows where he is going cannot be deterred by minor inconveniences. He does not stumble into reaction. He does not waste his energy on trivial matters. His direction becomes a force that shapes his environment, his interactions, and his very reality. People feel it. They notice it. A man with a definite chief aim carries himself differently. His presence commands respect, not because he demands it, but because he exudes the confidence of someone whose life is moving with purpose. There is a magnetic pull to clarity. The universe itself bends more willingly to those who operate with conviction. Resources seem to appear. Allies become visible. Paths open that were once hidden. But none of this happens to the man whose purpose remains vague, whose mornings begin in mental fog. It belongs to the man who defines, in no uncertain terms, what his life is about today and every day. This is why the act of writing the chief aim each morning is not a suggestion, it is a necessity. The hand writing the words imprints the mind. The mind holding the words shapes the man, and the man who lives by those words shapes his world. Clarity is not accidental, it is engineered. Purpose is not something remembered, it is something chosen, again and again, until it becomes the very marrow of one's being. The man who begins his day by defining his aim does not merely exist, he conquers. The victory visualization technique. Before the hands are set to work, before the feet take the first step, before the voice speaks its first command to the world, the battle is already underway. But it is not fought in the streets, nor in the fields, nor across the table from others. It is fought within the mind. The most successful, the most disciplined, the most powerful men have always understood that the day is won long before the day even begins. They knew the truth that most will never comprehend, that success is first a mental rehearsal before it becomes a physical reality. And this is the purpose of the victory visualization technique. This practice is not wishful thinking. It is not fantasy. It is the deliberate act of forging the day's outcome in the crucible of the mind. Just as a warrior sharpens his blade before battle, the disciplined man sharpens his thoughts with precision. He closes his eyes and sees, with absolute clarity, the day ahead unfolding exactly as he intends. He sees himself meeting every challenge with composure. He watches himself overcome every obstacle with certainty. He pictures his hands performing his tasks with mastery, his words delivered with strength, his presence commanding the respect of all who cross his path. This mental rehearsal imprints triumph before the world ever has the chance to test him. Where lesser men stumble into the day, reacting, guessing, and hoping, the man of discipline has already walked the day in his mind. He has rehearsed his victories. He has seen himself unmoved by difficulty, unshaken by adversity, and unbroken by distraction. When the challenges arrive, as they always do, they are not surprises, they are merely scenes he has already mastered internally. The power of visualization is rooted in the reality that the mind cannot distinguish between an event vividly imagined and one experienced in the physical world. The neural pathways fire the same, the emotional responses rehearse the same, the body prepares itself the same. This is not philosophy, it is fact. When a man visualizes success with intensity and clarity, he primes every fiber of his being to move in alignment with that vision. In the quiet moments of the morning, the man sits in stillness, and he builds the day before it happens. He does not dwell on what could go wrong, nor does he surrender mental space to doubt. He fills the canvas of his mind with images of precision, mastery, and victory. Every action, every conversation, every challenge is visualized as already conquered, and this rehearsal transforms into reality, because the man, having already become victorious in mind, cannot help but act accordingly. When the eyes open and the body rises, there is no hesitation. The mind has issued its orders. The body marches in lockstep with the vision. Success is no longer something that might happen. It is something that must happen because it has been decided. The man who masters this technique walks into the day undefeated, for he understands that the true battle is always won in the mind before it is ever fought in the world. The written contract with self. There is no greater contract a man will ever sign than the one he writes with himself. It carries no signature witnessed by others. It requires no lawyer, no stamp, no seal. Yet it possesses a force far greater than any agreement made between men. This contract is private, sacred, and binding, a solemn commitment drawn not in formality but in discipline. Each morning, before the weight of the world presses in, the man of mastery sits with pen in hand and writes his own terms, his promises, his standards, his expectations. It is in this quiet act that the man separates himself from the undisciplined masses who wander through life without direction, without accountability, without power. The world will not hold you accountable. No one is coming to demand that you rise to your highest standard. No judge will arrive at your door to punish you for living beneath your potential. The consequences of neglect are far more subtle, but infinitely more destructive. They show up in the form of mediocrity, regret, stagnation, and the slow decay of the spirit. And so the man who understands the laws of self-mastery does not wait for the world to discipline him. He disciplines himself. And this discipline begins with the written word, the daily contract with self. There is a peculiar power in writing. Thoughts are fleeting. Words spoken into the air are easily forgotten. But what is written holds weight. When a man commits something to paper, he gives it form. He transforms a vague intention into a concrete demand. He moves it from the realm of imagination into the realm of reality. The act itself is a declaration. This is who I am. This is what I demand of myself today. And this is what will be done. Not hoped for, not attempted, but done. In those early moments, the pen becomes a weapon against weakness. A man may write, I will complete my work with excellence. I will face discomfort without complaint. I will not tolerate distraction. I will move with purpose, speak with clarity, and act with integrity. These are not merely aspirations. They are orders. Orders given by the highest authority there is, the self-governed man. And when the day grows heavy, when fatigue whispers, when temptation knocks, the man remembers. He remembers not because someone reminded him, but because he holds in his pocket or his notebook the words he wrote by his own hand. A promise made in the light of dawn is not so easily broken in the shadows of challenge. It serves as a mirror. It stares back at him and asks, are you the man you said you would be this morning? The man who holds himself accountable without the need for external pressure becomes unstoppable. He lives not by the standards imposed by others, but by the higher, harsher, and nobler standards he writes for himself. This is the path of discipline. This is the path of mastery. A man who honors the contract he writes each morning will find that the world bends quietly to the will of one who first mastered the art of keeping his word to himself. Guarding the gate of the mind. There is a truth so simple, yet so mercilessly overlooked by most men, that it determines the entire trajectory of one's day and in time one's life. That truth is this: the mind is a fortress, and it possesses a gate. Each day, upon waking, a man stands as the sole guardian of that gate. Only he decides what is permitted to enter and take residence within the walls of his consciousness. And yet, Most go about their lives unaware of this responsibility, allowing doubt, fear, and the worthless noise of the outside world to march straight through the gates unchallenged, to plant themselves in the soil of their minds like weeds, choking out clarity, certainty, and strength. A man who does not deliberately guard his mind in the earliest moments of the morning is a man who will be conquered long before the first challenge arrives. The enemy does not always wear the face of obvious hardship or visible threat. No, it is often invisible, subtle, and insidious. It comes in the form of stray thoughts, small, seemingly harmless murmurs that whisper, "You are not ready. Today might be too much. Perhaps failure is waiting." These are not mere thoughts. They are invaders. Left unchecked, they multiply, and soon the mind that should be a weapon of precision becomes a battlefield of chaos. The disciplined man knows that his first and most vital task upon rising is not simply to prepare his body, nor merely to organize his tasks. His first commandment is to secure his mind. Before the noise of the world, before the opinions of others, before the friction of life has any chance to intrude, he stands guard at the gate and decides with brutal clarity what may pass and what must be cast out. This is not passive. It is not gentle. It is an aggressive act of self-protection. Consider for a moment what happens to the man who fails this duty. He rises and unknowingly invites the ghosts of yesterday's failures to follow him. He opens the gate to the creeping presence of uncertainty, allowing it to shape his posture, his speech, his decisions. The seeds of fear that could have been rejected in the silence of the morning now sprout into hesitation and self-doubt by midday. He walks into conversations with others already doubting his own worth. He approaches his tasks with a fragmented mind, easily distracted, easily discouraged, easily defeated, and yet he will tell himself this is normal. He will believe that life itself is the problem, when the truth is far simpler. He failed to guard the gate. But the man who understands the sacredness of this ritual rises differently. In the stillness of dawn, before the demands of the world stretch their fingers toward him, he confronts the invisible forces at his gate. He searches for doubt, for fear, for hesitation, and when he finds them, for they always attempt entry, he does not bargain with them. He does not reason or negotiate. He rejects them outright. He does not ask whether he is enough. He decides that he is. He does not ponder whether today's challenges are surmountable. He declares that he will rise to meet them